Welcome to the Insiders Career Club podcast. Now in its fourth season, I'm Cindy Thomas, your career insider, bringing you expert advice and tips on navigating different careers for your ultimate success. Now, did you know that we've been recognized as one of the top 25 job search podcasts by FeedSpot? But we're more than just job search tips. We're here to help you build a meaningful career. With over 25 years of experience in HR and talent acquisition, I'm here to guide you through this ever-changing job market. Whether you're in a job search, facing a possible layoff, or simply looking to transition to a new career, my specialized career programs can help you strategize and plan for your success. Get ready for a fantastic podcast ahead. And remember, our Resume RX, Interview Excellence Training, Offer Negotiation Bootcamp, and Career Road Mapping are just a few of my specialized career programs designed to help you thrive in today's competitive job market. Schedule a free assessment call with me at www.insiderscareerclub.com. Let's work together to ensure that you're prepared for whatever comes next. Sam Drauschek is the co-founder and chief process scientist at Truvle, whose mission is to assist businesses in reducing wasteful activity by providing them with innovative tools, software, and expert content. Sam has developed the Truvle Mapping Language, a universal process mapping language which has been adopted as the standard for multiple large enterprises globally. He is also the author of Becoming a Conscious Business, a book that explores the efficiency of biological systems and how to apply them to modern businesses. He's been featured in the top 100 magazine and recognized for his exceptional contributions to process mapping language. Let's welcome him into the show. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. I'm really glad that you're here and you're going to share more about your expertise with us. So let's start off with easy questions. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Centerville, Virginia, which is in the DC metropolitan area, Northern Virginia.
Okay. I have a sister that lives in the state of Virginia. She's in Hampton. So tell us more about growing up. Were you part of a big family? Share a little bit more about you with us.
Sure, of course. So I am the oldest of four children, and it was mostly my parents and my siblings growing up. And we lived, like I mentioned, in Centerville and had what I would guess would be a pretty typical suburban life. My grandmother was around a lot in the early years to help raise us, but otherwise, we didn't travel or do anything too exciting. We mostly were in school, playing with our friends in the neighborhood and hanging out with the family at home.
Yeah, sounds very similar to my childhood. with the grandparents, both of them, taking turns taking care of us. Well, tell us about your decision or why you wanted to get into science.
Sure. Well, originally, it was just as simple as wanting to be a doctor is what prompted it originally. And it wasn't because I had a particular inspiration to go into medicine or even health sciences. It's just career aspirations or career planning was not really a topic of conversation in my family or even in my network. So going into college, I really didn't have any more knowledge about what I could do with myself than I could be a firefighter, I could be a doctor, I could be a lawyer, or I could be a cashier at CVS or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it was more just driven by a simple, well, doctors make a lot of money and it seems like something that I could do. And I pursued science based on that alone at first. But I will say it just by happenstance, biology is where I sort of leaned toward when I started my pre-medical career in graduate in college. And I really took to it. I really do love biology. I love science. I studied chemistry and psychology. And it really shaped my entire path from there because science, I think, it just matches how I think. And now I can't really disentangle the two. So I would say I pursued science by happenstance, and then I really developed a passion for it early on. And now it really informs my career, my personal life, and everything I do.
Okay. So with science being such an integral part of you and the way that you think, what made you decide to stay in science as a process scientist rather than going on to be a scientist studying the body?
Sure. So I graduated from college and decided not to pursue medicine. And at that point, and I had made that decision for a number of reasons. It just didn't suit me. I had done a lot of volunteering in the space, and I just had a bad feeling about it. So why stick with the science? Initially, I was just a graduate. I was a graduate in 2008, which was arguably one of the worst job markets that we've ever seen for graduates. And I had a biology and chemistry degree. So, I had people saying, just go back to your parents' house and put your head in a hole until 2010. Don't even bother. Because with that combination, there wasn't a market. There wasn't a lot of jobs for young science majors that really could work out. And for me, I thought, okay, well, I'm happy to go into business. I'm happy to basically do whatever I can do to get working and not move into my parents' house. That was at the time the worst outcome that could have possibly happened to me. So I went with it. And my career then was shaped by just being scrappy with what I had. And then I guess to answer your question more directly, why stay with the science? Because I ended up going back and getting my MBA. I needed to study business to continue my career trajectory. It just seemed that business was lacking science. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it was one of those things where the fundamentals and the skills that I had and that I knew and that I was comfortable with, it wasn't a let's abandon them and start fresh just because this is how I need to make money or this is how I need to hack it to make it work. It was more, how can I bring the science, the scientific foundations, this core knowledge set into everything I do? Because to me, every job I had, every odd job, every step in my early career was missing that rigor and that discipline that I think science really imparts on young people and also scientists in the community. So I really didn't see a way I could be successful without it. That's maybe the short way to put it.
Okay. Well, so I find that very interesting because when you were thinking about what you wanted to do, you thought about what you loved and you found a way to use it practically. And I don't think people necessarily think of their careers that way all the time. So I think that was great. And to bring that point up, if young people are listening, that's a really great point for them to hear, a different way of thinking about it. And I'm sure it comes from the fact that you are an analytical thinker. You think linearly, correct? Am I saying that? Am I correct in my assumption? Yeah. And so, although I guess not all of us are, I would not describe myself as that. But to think about it from what can I do, which I think is the right way to have success in your career. Because if you're thinking about what I can do and what I enjoy doing and brings me gratification, then you're going to, and where can I do this? What's the outlet for my talent? I think you can find or better align yourself with a career that's going to work for you rather than not. Right. I think that I just wanted to bring that out.
And I absolutely agree with that. And I think it's very insightful and it does match my story. I really couldn't think of a way, I built all these skills that I really enjoyed, and the thought of throwing them out and just kind of doing whatever that just came my way and not trying to build off what I enjoyed, it just seemed very unpalatable instinctually back in my early in my career. So it kind of happened by accident, but in a way, the way you articulated it was exactly what I did. It was more chasing my own capabilities and my passion and seeing how they could grow versus having other people tell me what I need to learn and do.
Yes. And obviously you've been successful at it. So can you describe your experience in developing innovative tools and software aimed at reducing wasteful activity in the business processes? Because that's what you're doing now. That's where you're focusing your career talents, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a natural evolution from what was over a decade of consulting work that preceded it. And when we talk about how did I end up going into tools and software tools specifically, it's really a story of seeing a gap in the marketplace through my consulting work, where, like I said, this scientific mindset, especially when it came to process management, was not really being practiced in the way that I thought it should. So I first had to go and test my methods and consult and work with clients and gain that live experience. And that ultimately led to, how do I get this to more people? And the way to bring your knowledge to bear at a larger scale, or at least in my mind, is to build that into software solutions so that you can provide more access, you can provide cheaper access. And that's really where I'm at now in my career, which is, I think I've had a lot of success in the field, and I found something that's really helped a lot of people. And I'd like to be able to share that to a wider audience. So that's what brings me into the software space.
So since we're kind of on that topic, do you want to share about the mapping tool that you've created and what you're doing right now with your company?
Absolutely. So my current company is called Truvle. That's Truvle. And our first product is, as you just mentioned, a process mapping tool. And the quick difference between this tool and maybe other tools, if anyone on the line has tried to do process mapping, most of the tools that we use today are just whiteboard tools. They're empty canvases. So you have a blank page, and if you want to draw a process diagram or you want to document process data, you have to come up with the language. You have to come up with the conventions. You have to decide how you want to do that. And that can be a real barrier for a lot of people. And especially as we have a higher demand for process data, better quality process data, more and more people are trying to find solutions to help them defeat that learning curve and make it easier. And that's what the Truvle tool is attempting to do. It's got an opinion, it's got structure, it's a tool. It looks like tools you've seen, but it's got very strict borders and guidelines on it so that you can go in and you can build something fairly quickly and not have to think about it too much. And for us, being able to map a process quickly and easily, especially now, is super critical. And it's the foundation for all the rest of the process management that we're hoping to bring to the table and down in our roadmap.
Okay. So when you're thinking about it, in your opinion, what are the key challenges key challenges that businesses face when it comes to reducing wasteful activity? And what are those key challenges?
Sure. The key challenges, and this links it to, I apologize, I didn't give it the answer to the last question. How does our tool help challenge waste like you're talking about? The biggest challenge is that businesses can't actually understand well their own processes. And if you don't understand your own processes well, then all of your attempts to manage waste, improve the process, evolve your company, build new capability, whatever it is really left to a lot of guess and check. And that's where you have a lot of waste in organizations. So the first step to combating that waste is to be able to accurately, consistently, and quickly map your processes out so that you can communicate what your processes are. And you can build a common consensus that before you start to change a process, you know what the baseline process is. So our tool is a big step in the direction of making that more accessible, making it more standard, and that the problem we're trying to solve, and what most companies are struggling with and where the waste is that they're trying to manage or change complicated processes without really having a good baseline understanding of what they are. So that's the first major problem that we're trying to solve. And it's really something that most businesses today are struggling with in one way or another.
Okay. Now, Sam, in your consulting experience, is the reason that businesses don't know what their processes are because each department has its own process? Is that the issue, and they're not collaborating or using each other's processes? Is that part of the problem?
That's certainly an example of the problem. But I would say, if I was going to explain the problem more generally, it's just that companies, as they grow more complicated, and especially in the last decade or so, as they become increasingly digitized, virtual, decentralized, globalized, whatever you want to conceptualize it, it's that people aren't able to intuit or see as easily what these processes are anymore. And as you first started, it could be that departments are not talking. It could be that people who are sitting right next to each other aren't talking about what they're doing. It's just this systemic lack of communication. The ability to see a process in the digital world is much less than it was before the internet, let's say. And just to drive the point home, if I was a middle manager in the 90s, there's a good chance that everything I needed to know, I could walk into my office and look at. I could experience the process with my senses. My hearing, a few conversations, I could see what's going on. That's not the case almost anywhere in 2024. And that really makes it harder for people to use their common sense to understand what a process is. Because how do you intuit a process that you can't see? that's happening remotely. Half the team is never co-located in the same place. This is what we're talking about, which is that I don't know my processes because all the senses I'm used to having to discern what the process is are no longer available to me. And this is becoming a much larger problem as, technology continues to evolve.
Okay. So since that collaboration and communication are a big piece of it, how do you approach working with cross-functional teams to achieve consensus and drive change?
Sure. Most of the time when in a consulting capacity, or if you just think about process in general, hosting events or even hosting virtual meetings where those cross-functional representatives are in the same room and they're being facilitated to discuss the same process subject, that's the quickest way to solve some of the issues with communication, to facilitate the communication directly, not playing telephone, forcing people to make the time and the space to actually talk about what their processes are and broker understanding with their colleagues. And outside of that, like a secondary path is really get them to document it alone in their own functional areas, and then make sure you're aggregating that documentation in a way that can be consumed by everyone where there's relevancy for them to consume it. That's another way you can start cross-pollinating and making sure that you have that strong base of understanding. So those are the top two that come to mind. And a lot of times, either strategy you use is predicated on the fact that you can actually document process data effectively. And that's a lot of the focus of the consulting work that I've done throughout my career.
Okay, so continuous improvement. So let's say you map out a process improvement for a business. How do you continually improve upon that process to ensure that they have long-term success?
Sure. So most of the time, there's a few different ways. Let me frame it this way. Continuous improvement is something that you can set it up only for companies that are mature in their process management.
Okay.
And I'll say this because I don't want to give the wrong impression. Most people who have a problem with their processes and they first start this journey, let's say, of I want to understand how to do process improvement, they would be successful if they could execute a process improvement one time. And like they get through the project, they get through the change management, they implement it, and it's successful. That's hard enough on its own. So when you ask the question of how do we help clients install like a continuous improvement culture that's successful, it takes, let's say you finish that first project, and at the end of that first project, it helps you set up measures and metrics. So typically understanding your process is A, and then being able to measure your process effectively is B. And then C would be being able to understand when those measures indicate that there's another problem coming. And so having controls and governance on top of your measures and metrics. Okay. So that is how you set up continuous improvement. So if a client is ready for it in terms of maturity, then yes, you can tell them this is how you fix the process. This is how you measure the process. This is how you govern the process. And when your governance functions are telling you that the process is coming up again for process improvement, it's usually because there's been a control that's violated, the market's changing, you have it on a 2-year cycle, whatever it is. But that's sort of the general capabilities that you layer on top of each other to foster continuous improvement in a client setting.
Okay. All right. So stakeholder buy-in is critical for success, right? In the implementation of the processes. How do you effectively communicate these benefits of solutions to stakeholders at various levels of the organization so that you can obtain that buy-in?
Yeah. The biggest thing about getting stakeholder buy-in is, and I'm going to turn this around a little bit, it's not usually explaining the benefits of solutions, because that's sort of a delayed gratification in a way. It's really getting them aligned on the severity of their current problems. Because the solution is just going to be solving a problem. But if you can't convince stakeholders that they have a problem today that is actually real and they agree on the severity and also the impact of not addressing it, then it doesn't matter how shiny the solution is, because they can often, as they do, get distracted by your proverbial squirrels, right? Like the next big exciting thing, the strategy, like your reviews at the end of the quarter, whatever it is. But if you can actually get everyone aligned on what the problem is, that's a much better place to gain stakeholder insight and approval and backing early. And the best way to do that is to map the process so that they can understand and see exactly what the process is, exactly where the problem is, and you can broker that agreement, because that's got to be the strong foundation to facilitate change, at least in my professional opinion.
Okay. So innovation or process changing or anything often involves risk taking. Can you share a time when you had to take a calculated risk to implement a new approach to reducing wasteful activity, and what were the outcomes?
Sure. So I'm only struggling to spit out an example immediately because I feel like every example I could conjure is particularly risk-laden, especially when you talk about changing when you're at a level where you're making a major process change. In fact, hundreds or thousands of people, in large companies that scale, there's always a risk in taking on those kind of projects. And I would say most of the projects I take on, when I try to tackle risks, the risks come in the form of I wasn't able to speak to everybody directly who might be a detractor or a resistor in this project. You just don't know where they all are, or the requirements are so complicated, you have to go with the 80-20 rule and just assume that when the system's in place to hit your deadline, you're going to be able to configure it to get up to, the last bit of it. So a lot of risk in general is just, it's the unknown. And I know I'm speaking at a super generic level, but all projects are kind of different when you're talking about process improvement. And generally what you go into it is knowing that I know what I know from doing research and studying the process well and getting all the data I could. But what I don't know is equates to my risk. And I think every project you go in with a certain amount of risk and hope for the best. And I would say in my career specifically, there's been plenty of examples where I've been successful and also that the risk has been a little bit more than I thought. And it's really put us into almost like a failure state. So sorry if I departed from the original question. I'm not sure if there's a specific example I could point to, but I would say the outcome of taking risks in the project work that I do, a good outcome would be that the project succeeds, the change that you were expecting is implemented to a high fidelity, and that the business starts to see the value of what your solution was meant to bring, which is either usually lower waste and more profit, typically.
Okay. How do you keep yourself updated on emerging technologies and best practices in process improvement? And how do you incorporate this into the knowledge of your work?
Sure. This is probably where I would not tell people to emulate me, but how I mostly stay up to date is I just go out and I speak as if I know everything, and I'm waiting for people to tell me I'm wrong or introduce to me things that I don't know. Because I don't spend a lot of my time reading or just like plugged into channels where I'm passively absorbing information, because there's just so much going on in this space. So oftentimes I am really just trying to cultivate a beginner's mind or somebody who can always be taught. And I'm just out there trying to be speaking on the subject, writing on the subject, practicing the best techniques that I know, and just kind of keeping my eyes peeled for somebody who knows better than me, honestly.
Okay. So you're also an author. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So my book is called Becoming a Conscious Business. And it's a book about process science. And it's also told through the lens of my personal life and how I came to certain realizations that really unlocked this branch of science for me personally. And it also gives some insight about how I apply it to my personal life and also my professional endeavors. So the book it's a lot of things. It's very dense. And it was really written originally as a way for me to process this density of knowledge that I was collecting. And I couldn't quite figure out how it all fit together. So the impetus for writing this book was really to try to unify a lot of my observations around process, personal growth, professional achievement. And that's really what this book is. It's the outcome of that thought process, that distillation.
Okay. If someone they have a business and they want to learn more about process improvement or contact you, how can they do that?
Sure. So you can always contact me directly at sam@truvle.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm Sam Drauschak, and I'm really the only Drauschak out there as far as LinkedIn's concerned, except for my wife. So you'll find me pretty easily. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in process improvement, process management, process science to reach out to me directly, because you may get more than you bargained for if you ask me a process question, you get me on the phone. But I'm very passionate about it, so I'm always available.
I think we can hear that in your voice and your answers. Do you want to spell the name of your company again and give your email address one more time?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Truvle is Truvle. And my email at Truvle is just Sam, my name, SAM, @Truvle, Truvle.com.
All right. Well, Sam, it's been delightful to speak with you today. Thank you for sharing so much about process improvement. It's not a profession that I think there are a lot of people in. Is that Is that true?
It is true. I mean, compared to the other professions that you probably know more of, it's actually a very quickly growing profession, but there are maybe only a handful of us in each company that you may consider.
All right. Well, maybe something that some listeners might want to look further into. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I wish you a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for tuning in. Your support means the world to us. And if you enjoy this podcast, please consider leaving a positive rating for us on Apple Podcasts. New episodes are released every 2 weeks on the first and third Wednesdays. Your continued support is essential. Keep listening and share these career-changing podcasts with your friends, your family, and your colleagues. Podcasts are also on my website at www.insiderscareerclub.com. And if you need help with your career, sign up for a coaching call with me and get your career back on track. Now, before we go, let's speak victory over you. Your future is bright, and there are exciting opportunities on the way. Stay open and believe that your success is just around the corner. Until next time, take care.